Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, ImperialDane, with another Propagandacast for you, my wonderful viewers, and today we do have a 1 versus 1 on Semois. Yes, indeed, it will be Semois, and yes, indeed, it is a second match for today, as I did promise yesterday that I would do one, because I'm so absolutely happy about getting 400 subscribers, and of course, I'm rather hoping to get to 500 and even further as possible fast, of course. So, let's have a quick look at the map. It's that rather fun map based on some rivers. We have the village right here acting as a rather nice zone. Victory points in either side holding high munitions points, and the only medium yield fuel points right next to the bases. And let's go have a look at the opposing armies. Here we have the Pioneers of HarkonnenRKKA. I have absolutely no idea what that means, but I hope it's something nice involving kittens. Anyhow, he shall be featuring as the 184th Grenadier Division, ready to hold the British Irish Guards Division off as they are pressing towards Arnhem. And who shall be leading the Irish Guards? Well, no other than me, ImperialDane. Yes, indeed, it was a bit of a time since I thought we had anyone as the British, so I figured I might as well step in and have a bit of fun. Although I do prefer to play as the Wehrmacht or Panzerleader rather than the smelly British, huh? But you know, you can't have everything, and sometimes it's my duty as Propagandacast to show you something else. So, let's get to it, eh? Reconnaissance section right on the spot. Lieutenant being marched out from the truck, although he does seem to be requiring an extraordinary large amount of tea before he is getting out. So, there you go. Tea timer. Right. I'll promise I'll not make that sort of bad jokes again. Pioneers marching out from the 184th Grenadier Division. Pioneers leading the charge. Looks like we're seeing 3 Pioneer teams and not 4, so he does seem to be trying for a rather heavy capture strategy, but at the same time not going completely overboard, and he's probably going to be setting up a Wehrmacht quarters rather swiftly. Yes, and I can just briefly hear in the background the rather menacing British music that sometimes play it. I rather like it, in fact. And my personal opinion is that of all the sort of soundtracks that are in the game, the British is the absolute #1, and we do also see the German player laying down some barbed wire here. Not a bad idea, since this point is of course the only medium yield, and it does tend to get harassed, in particular if you are the Wehrmacht player. So keep that in mind, but of course, rather like the British soundtrack, it's really spectacular. I can't remember the fellow's name, but he does use the Prague Philharmonic Orchestra for it, and it's quite something extra. I mean, no offense against Einen Sur or what's that other guy, he does some other big things, but they just don't quite hold up to the same thing as this one, so I rather hope Relic would consider using it again for any future games. But there you go. Lieutenant having seized some territory, and we see a 2nd infantry section hitting the field. All nice and dandy. In the meanwhile, the headquarters command truck is swift to pack up and move on to right this spot, which of course will give me increased fuel, but at the same time also have the secondary benefit of actually ensuring that no Huns will be able to seize that back. And we have seen the lieutenant here is quick to link up with the infantry section, who are now moving towards the center. Wehrmacht quarters is up, and we do see the first Volksgrenadiers of the 184th Grenadier Division fresh out of the Scheldt. The Scheldt partly being a rather infamous map in 3 versus 3, but it is also a part in Holland and was a rather important thing, where a large part of the German army was in fact holed up, but which Montgomery decided to, you know, not bother with and go straight for Arnhem, which of course rather cost him dearly, as the Germans were rather swift to get as many as possible out of that small area, which at the same time also had the added benefit of really making it very difficult for the Allies to get any supplies inland. And supplies was really one of the major problems with the Allies during the Western campaign. And yes, the Allies did have a lot of resources, but what most people don't tell you is that they had a lot of trouble actually getting them anywhere. And we have the first engagement. Volksgrenadier setting up in the church, and infantry section alongside the lieutenant, quick to seek up cover right here in the cemetery, firing away here. This position not being the best, as you may notice. the church generally isn't very good when it comes to actually riflemen, because most of the windows will never actually be used, nor will that church tower. Always find that a bit odd. Of course, that might also be a bit beneficial to anyone who's not in it. So there you go, it's best meant for MGs, and we see an MG42 sitting up right here. And I do believe I might be spotting it and sort of maneuvering my troops here. And we see a Pioneer sneaking in, trying to go for the strategic cutoff point. Carrier on the way, or on the way, to give Jerry a good walloping. And looks like these Pioneers will have some luck there, but Carrier is finally maneuvering about. The Carrier was sort of meant as a slight artillery tractor and general support wagon. It was also, I believe, used as a reconnaissance vehicle. The French also had a variant of this, although it didn't do them much good, and most of them ended up in German hands. Some of them were converted into martyrs, I believe. And the Volksgrenadiers there, I do believe, are retreating. Yes, there we go. Carrier now with the ever venerable Vickers 30 caliber machine gun blasting away, really doing a trick to those Pioneers. And we might see something right here at this small marketplace, although it's rather abandoned right now. No point in selling vegetables and fruits and whatnot when the Wehrmacht is on the spot. Pioneers pulling back. The MG42 is still having an overwatch position. Fresh Volksgrenadiers are also quick to saunter into the central area. Pioneers forced into a swift retreat, and we do see the reconnaissance section doing what it was good at right here in the east. And I suspect, yes, a field support truck is also on the way, and I'm quickly converting this marketplace into a small mortar emplacement zone, as I am quick to set one up, so that marketplace will have a slightly different usage right now. And we do see a small engagement here. Volksgrenadiers charging right into the recon section, and looks like the squad leader was taken down. Not the best choice, it does really put down the damage output of the Volksgrenadiers by quite a lot. So that was a rather nicely shot there by the marksman. Who knows, he might get a medal for that if he survives. And we do hear the first mortar rounds thumping out from the old marketplace. The empty one, abandoned one. Carrier sneaking about, perhaps hoping to annoy this MG42. And what is this? Another MG42 sitting up right in the cafe. I'm not entirely sure why he wanted this many MG42s. Of course, one thing to note about this cafe is it's not really that good unless you only want to cover this area. I mean, if you have some opponents there, getting up here is brilliant. If they are there or here, this building is as good as useless. This one is actually quite a lot better, and in fact will cover this area somewhat, and this area it really is a lot better. So keep that in mind. Besides, if you want to cover this area, then this building can in fact do the job pretty nicely. And we do have a small engagement here. Pioneers moving in, probably trying to sneak in. Perhaps they had a flamethrower, but they did not survive, so we will never know. Volksgrenadiers also quick to conduct a hasty retreat. We do see MG42 swiftly setting up right here in this building, having a nice position right here, covering this point, this, and, well, this area as well. Of course, if it's sitting from all different sides, it's not going to do much. Of course, recon section sneaking about here. Not having to worry about this, but those Volksgrenadiers with MP40s on the other hand will be able to be quite nasty if they can get close. And of course, that's the key bit about MP40s. They need to get close, and some players do have a tendency of just throwing them out as if though they were candies, which doesn't always help, as of course then you're sort of giving up any long-range firepower. Reconnaissance section swiftly getting into that house, it may look like, and of course submachine guns aren't really good against chaps that are hiding inside buildings. They need something a bit more accurate. Sappers with Piats on the move, the Piat being a sort of curious anti-tank weapon, being spring-loaded rather than actually any sort of rocket-propelled fun business.
Losing a sector, I say.
Reconnaissance section moving towards the east and taking on these Pioneers, forcing them into a swift retreat. The 184th being in a sort of defensive posture, and I think lots of Volksgrenadiers with MP40s now. Again, sort of nice for an assault configuration, but again, that does rather involve you actually being able to get them close enough to all of these rifle-armed British troops. And of course, there we go, having a bit of luck, but the German Foot Grenadiers are taking quite a bit of hits, and another marksman shot knocking out another one, leaving behind only 3, and we also hear the thumps of the mortar as always. And we have the Stuart on the way. Stuart light tank, always a fun little tank. MG42 setting up in a small position to watch over the road. And the Eastern Victory Point is once more falling into the hands of the brave lads of King George. And we see a Sturm Army coming up here, having completely forgone the Krieg barracks. He will apparently be relying heavily on MP40 equipped Foot Grenadiers for his infantry. Or will he perhaps have gone for Blitzkrieg, as that is what normally people do? Apparently not. So there you go. But he is getting Pumas and a Kampfkraft Center, so we can imagine some sort of heavily Puma involving strategy. And we see the armor command truck being summoned in from the rear lines, ready to provide some armor support. Shall always be nice. And we have a small lull in the fight as I'm quick to see some territory up, sneak about a bit. Sappers once more moving out, and we see the assault Volksgrenadiers moving out once more, uncertain of their faith. The MG42 signaling where the Reich ends at the moment, and opening fire and suppressing the infantry section, forcing them into retreat. Nicely done, Mr. Harkonnen. Harkonnen, actually, I do believe that's from the Dune universe, albeit I'm not hugely into it, so I won't know actually precisely. And there we go, Sonderkraft 243, armored car, 8 Rad. Heavy armored car, featured prominent because of its 8 wheels, which is partly the main name. The Puma part was actually the name of, there we go, the upgraded variant with the 50mm cannon, which itself came from the Leopard reconnaissance tank, which was a tank variant that was actually cancelled. Stuart sneaking about, taking a few shots, but the threat of the Puma does force it to move out. Not really a good idea to have a Puma on the loose, and there we go. First light armor engagement, heavy armored car versus the Stuart light tank. Who shall win? Not looking good for the Stuart, though. Already 2 frontal shots penetrating it, and it hasn't yet to actually hit the Puma, so there we go. Swift retreat. Not very keen on it, and reconnaissance section taking on the HMD42 and retreating. A bit of manpower being floated here, and oh dear, the Stuart catches on fire. And we see the sappers were quick to retreat to the captain to provide a bit of fire support. Of course, that is something the British can do. They can retreat to the captain, and that can be a bit of a sneaky trick to do. Of course, it can also help you to sort of quickly reinforce areas where things are looking dire. If the captain does just coincidentally happen to be there, then of course you can retreat your troops like I did here. Sappers to the rescue, forcing away that devious Puma, prowling the battlefield and knocking out the valiant Stuart light tank. Sappers quick to seek up cover in this building. The captain joining in with his Webley revolver, firing away,